Here's your market recap on this Friday, the 21st day of November. Another volatile week in the markets, maybe not quite as much as we had seen the last several weeks, but headlines still playing a big part of the markets, especially in the cattle industry, more so than actual supply and demand fundamentals have. Got the cattle on feed report released today. Of course, we missed last month, but surprisingly, we were given last month's data, so we'll catch up on that here in just a minute. Speaking of headlines, right before the recording of this report, there was a headline that came out that Tyson plans to close their Lexington, Nebraska beef plant, and the knee-jerk headline seems probably a bit worse than what's actually going to happen. If you dig in a little bit further, you found that they plan to basically close that plant and move those kill numbers to other locations, Amarillo, Texas being one, as well as increasing some of the kill capacity at some of their other plants. So overall, that likely probably is a non-market mover and probably won't affect overall kill capacity all that much. Taking a look at that cattle on feed report that came out today, basically it was a non-market mover as well. Numbers really well within expectations. The on feed number came in at 98.4%, placements at even 90%, and marketings at 92%, and all those awful close to the pre-report estimates. The number that we missed in October was that steer heifer number, being that October would have been a quarterly report, and we were very anxious in the industry to get that number to see if there was any signs of heifer retention or herd rebuilding. And when we look at that number, it came in at 38% heifers on feed, which really is not a small enough number to really support what most people think's going on out there. For there to be any real heifer retention or herd rebuilding, that number needs to be in the low 30s, not the high 30s. So if there's anything going on, it is at a very, very small pace. Taking a look at negotiated feedlot trade for the week, as of the 2 o'clock cutoff time, 55,903 head. Texas reported 2,087. Kansas 3,112, Iowa 21,448 head, and Nebraska 17,524. Once again this week, trade developed on Wednesday midweek there, and as the week progressed, bids kind of disappeared or decreased, and prices got a little bit lower as the week went on. In the South, live sales 222 to 224. Iowa had live sales at 212 to 218, dress sales 340 to 347, Nebraska 215 to 219 live, 340 to 347 dressed. Box beef cutout values for the week. Choice closed on Friday at $371.48. That was up 75 cents for the week. Select at $356.98, which was up $2.74 for the week, and the Choice Select spread at $14.50. Taking a look at some of the stickout sales from around the auction barns this week in the state. When all said and done, probably about 31,000 head of cattle went through the auction barns. The market very mixed at sale barns. There was a few places where things could have been called higher, but overall, that market was generally probably $10 to $12 lower or so. Some stickout sales around with head counts over 20 head of drafts. The 426-pound steers, 23 head of them sold at South Central Regional Stockyards in Vienna at $472 this week. Had 25 head of 495-pound steers at Four State Stockyards in Exeter, sell at $440. 20 head of 506-pound steers in New Cambria, $431.50. The average statewide this week, $419. 20 head of 530-pound steers at South Central Regional Stockyards bought $430. 26 head of 626-pound steers at Joplin Regional Stockyards, $406. Had 80 head of 681-pound steers in Windsor, $387. Joplin sold a full load of 700-pound steers smooth, $371. The average statewide this week, $352. Kingsville had a load of 800-pound smooth steers at $365. China livestock auction sold a load of 875-pound steers at $341.25, as well as a load of 906-pound steers at $337. A couple of stick-out drafts of heifers this week included 71 head of 510-pound heifers at 4 state stockyards in Exeter for $386. The average this week on those light 5-weight heifers at $366. And then Kingsville had a load of 723-pound heifers, $355.50. The average statewide this week at $334. It was noted by a lot of the reporters this week that the offering was much plainer. Drafts were generally much smaller, especially on the calves. We didn't see near as many big lots and drafts this week as what we seen last week. Taking a look at the closing futures on Friday. For the week, live cattle were $2.93 to $4.75 lower. Lean hogs lost 70 cents to $1.85, and feeder cattle $5.18 to $6.33 lower. Live cattle for December on Friday closed at $214.45 down 27, February $214.77 down 62, and April $215.15 down 42. Feeder cattle, the nearby contract, currently January now, so we've got a couple months now before the feeder cattle index has to stay anywhere in line with the futures. January closed on Friday at $314.22 down $2.15. March $307.05 down $1.50. April at $305.35 down $1.20. Those feeder cattle futures had a huge spread today, opening up sharply lower, then turning higher midday and falling back lower by the end of the day. Lean hogs, December closed at $77.80, down $1.67. February $77.70, down $1.95. And April $81.30, down $2.42. Turning our attention to the grain markets at the elevators around the state on Friday, corn bids were steady to 7 lower for the week. Soybeans, 14 lower to 12 higher. Wheat was unchanged for the week, and milo steady to 5 lower. On Friday, corn bids in the St. Louis region, 440, Kansas City 425. Soybean bids in St. Louis, 1133 to 1138, Kansas City 1060 to 1105. Wheat bids, St. Louis 501 to 549, Kansas City at 502. On the Board of Trade, really, the grains did not do a whole lot this week, given that we finally did sell and ship some beans to China. That news kind of seemed to wear off awful fast and didn't really affect much for the week. Soybeans were steady to 4 cents lower, wheat steady to 7 lower, corn 4 to 7 lower, soybean meal 60 cents to $7.40 lower. On Friday, December corn was a penny lower, closing the day at $4.25.5, March at $4.37.5, down a quarter of a cent, and May at $4.44 3/4, down a half. January beans 2.5 higher, $11.25, March up 2 1/4, $11.34 1/4, May $11.43 1/4, up 1 3/4. December wheat was unchanged at $5.27 even, March at $5.39 3/4, down a penny, and May $5.48 1/4, down 1 1/2. Soybean meal for December up $1.10 a ton at $3.15.10. Soybean oil for December 50.26 a hundredweight, down 40 cents. With the Missouri Department of Agriculture, that's a recap of your markets for Friday. This is Tony Hancock.